Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm the owner of Classic Shoe and Leather Service in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a third generation cobbler with over 30 years experience. Our facility repairs all leather items. Come on in, let's see what we're repairing today. So on today's lesson, we're going to be trading in some regular leather loafer or leather soled loafers for some lug sole loafers. Okay, so these are traditional bit loafers, pretty simple, just a traditional Italian sole, heel, pretty standard, nothing really bigger deal or about them. You know, find these all over the place. We're going to make them into lug soles, so it's a little more rugged looking, a little more sturdy looking, a little less dress, a little more casual, and it just makes it a different shoe. So first we're going to start off by taking off the base, taking off the sole. Go ahead and stick the screwdriver under there. Try not to stab yourself when you're doing this, okay? So what we're doing when we do this, taking the screwdriver in there and we're turning and we're using the leverage of the screwdriver to pop the base off. And it's going to come off pretty easy because this is a paper base. It's not a leather base or anything that's really going to hold the nail very well. So you can take that off. See the nails left over right there. Next, we're going to go from the back of the shoe, and we're going to pull forward. Now, when pulling off a sole, always the same thing. You want to pull to the center of the shoe. So I'm pulling to right here when I'm pulling. If you pull from the side, you want to pull to here. You want to pull to the center of the shoe, any direction that you're pulling. That way, you, number one, have the most leverage. You also have the least possibility of doing damage when pulling. Okay, now, you can see the nails in here. Okay, see those right there? These are ratchet nails. The ratchet nails that are in there are meant to hold on the base and hold on the back side of the heel. When you're pulling like this, you'll get to a point where the ratchet nails, see that one right there, will actually not be set into the heel seat very well. They'll be set into the actual upper of the shoe. At that point in time, you have to be very careful as where you're pulling because you might actually rip the upper. So we'll hit that real soon. See where that one is. That one came up pretty easy. It's still there. So let's switch back to the other side and see how it does. See? Right here. See how it's tugging and pulling on the leather right there? You want to make sure that when you have that, you put your thumb right here, real strong. That way it pulls out and you pull against this so that you don't rip and tear this. You give it some support behind it with your thumb. So as the nail pulls up, it pulls towards the center. Very important right there. That keeps you from ripping and tearing the upper, doing damage, which means you have more work to do to fix it. Also, it turns unsightly. So once you get up to the stitches here, you're going to take your knife, which is dull. Don't work with dull knives. Dull knives cut, and they cut a lot worse. So I'm going to throw and sharpen our blade real quick. That's better. Okay, so I'm going to push with my palm of my hand, once again, towards the center. I'm going to pop the stitches as I go. I'm going to go from left to the right, back and forth as I go. Now, I will use my pullers again, but not until I reach my crease up here where the connecting material is. See it right there? So I want to get just a little bit past that. Love the sound of a sharp knife. Oh, there it is. So, take a screwdriver, blunt, come in and use that leverage to pull that loose so that this little curve right here and this little curve right here don't rip into the upper. Once again, don't want it to rip. So pay attention to the parts where all the connecting pieces are. Okay, and come back and pull forward again until we get to the sole, to the stitches. Come back to the other side. Now I'm going to flip forward. I'm going to come See, sharp knife cuts the stitches, doesn't cut the leather. A dull knife won't cut the stitches, and you'll end up trying to pull so hard to cut the stitches that you'll end up slicing the leather like that because it's too dull to go through it. Always use a sharp knife. All right, after we do that, we want to go ahead and get rid of the nails. Best way to do that is to pull the insole out. Start from the heel here. Dig your fingers underneath it. You want to get underneath the pad there and just gently pull up. Use your fingers to pull it all the way to the toe. It'll be glued down in the center, and you just got to pull it loose. Once you have that out, go ahead and mark your number, which we don't have because we're doing a video, so the customer's information isn't shown, which is smart for videos. We don't want to show the customer's information. Okay, so that's why if you ever look on the videos, you don't see any of the tickets, you don't see the names. We do keep that covered up. We don't want anybody's stuff to get out there on the internet. So you go through and just simply hammer these down on the jack. If you look on the jack here, you'll see what I'm doing is I'm putting the edge of the insole here, the edge of the nail, I put the jack right here so that it's leveraged against it, and then I can just pull it down like this. Like that. And the nails come in like that. Pull, pull. See, nail. Oh, that one's tight. And another nail. All right. From that point, we need to pull the stitches because we don't want all that there. All right. Get my tool. Okay, so center string on the inside, it's just a chain stitch. So come in most of the time and pull out a big string, pull out most of them at once. Like that. The ones that don't, all the stitches are out. Through, and we glue the little pieces together. Now, this is also important. When you first start out, take a pencil while you're taking it apart before you start to glue or anything. Make sure everything's in place like this. Take a pencil and draw a little line around where it sits in here. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want it to be really close, because once you pull it apart like this and you put glue in there and all that, you want it to go pretty much in the exact same place. Otherwise, the shoe is not going to fit properly. It's not going to feel right because the customer has already broken in. Now, this one, it's a new sole and a new shoe, and he's putting on a completely different sole anyway. So it's not going to be as important, but luckily I have lots and lots of practice, so it'll go right back in the exact place anyway. But for people that are doing it for the first time, you want to go ahead and do a little mark there to help you out. Okay, glue goes everywhere under here to make sure that that's nice and solid, because you don't want any squeaks. All right, so show you like that, but glue on the inside. I got a little bit right here. Oops. A little bit right there. But I took care of that. No glue on the inside because we don't want that. All right. That's going to sit up and dry for a little while. I'm going to break down this one and get it in the same place. Actually, let me go ahead and show you that base once again, since that first one popped off so easily. I want to show you the leverage here. So what we're doing is we're going to take the blade of the screwdriver, we're going to stick it right in the corner right here. We're going to push, and then we're going to take and we're going to pull up on the edge so that it takes and pushes the heel off. And I'm going to try not to stab myself while doing it. Okay, and see how, just a little, like that, and it comes right off. All right, so we'll chime in when we are sanding for the slip sole. See you in a minute. All right, so these have had a chance to dry. we're going to put them back together. If you'll look, we'll put them right back in the same place. It actually pretty much takes its own shape. You just have to go with what the leather wants to do, particularly on new shoes like this. You can see it follows that line. Nice light little tap with the mallet. All the way around, make sure the glue sets. Pull that back off. Take the other one, put it on the jack. And you'll see, if you look right here, you'll see the outline of the glue against the other glue. You can see it just wants to go right back in place. See that line right there? So, it's pretty easy to follow. All right, nice little light little tap with the mallet. And we're going to walk over to the sander here. We're going to sand the bottom of the shoes and the slip soles, and then we'll glue them together. All right, come on over. Sander's kind of loud, so I don't really talk very much. There we go. Shocked. Lots of static electricity. All right. We got some glue. Now, you saw me sand both sides of this. The reason I sanded both sides, or the reason I sanded it anyway, is because the slip sole material will gather dust and debris and wax and stuff like that will pull to the surface. So you want to go ahead and just sand it off real nice and then dust it so you got a good clean surface to work with. Just take your glue, nice even coat. One brush full should do across the full slip sole like this. Spread it out very even. Nice long strokes there. So you can see there's no globs. It's all nice and even all the way across. Okay, so that's what you're always looking for when you're doing glue like this, because you want it to all dry at the same time. That's very important. A little bit more glue. I'm getting a little dry there. Nice even coats. Beautiful. So this will only require one coat on each surface dry lightly, and then we'll be able to go stitch it. That's what my point was. We sand both sides of the slip sole material. That way I don't have to turn the machine back on after I knock this together. I can go straight to stitching and then straight to gluing the other material. So you only want to put glue where you have sanded, and you only wanted to sand just outside the edge of the stitch line there. As you'll see, got a little debris in there. As you'll see where I sanded, see just outside that stitch line right there. That way you make sure that your sole attaches really well, but when you stitch you can pull the glue back and the stitch line is all that shows. It makes it nice and pretty. As you see, I really don't try. I try very hard not to glue outside the lines, just like kindergarten. But I do want to make sure that I glue just outside the stitching. That's important. That way I get a good bond. All right, so nice and even and all the way around. That's going to dry for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to knock that together, and then it's going to get stitched, and then we're going to sand the other soles and glue all this up again. All right, see you in a minute. Okay, so we have the slip soles put onto the shoes. Now we're going to do the trimming and the stitching, and then we'll go ahead and sand the other soles and give it the first round of glue. Okay. So what you want to make sure you're doing here is you're following the line of the soles where the stitching is. You don't want to cut very, very close to the upper because this is a lug sole. It's supposed to be a little rugged and whatnot, so you definitely want to start off with a little wider stance than a traditional sole. So we come in like this. All right, which also makes it interesting to stitch. All right, nice little form there. Do the other one the same way. I have lots of shoes in my way. They're rather busy at the moment, which is a good thing. I like being busy. Better than being bored. Don't like being bored. Not very good at it. Alright. Come in and trim this one up just a little bit. Right here. I like the carpenter's term, measure twice, cut once. Around here, it's cut. Look at it, cut it again, look at it, cut it again, look at it, cut it again, until you get it right, because just about everything we do is custom. All right, so we are going to stitch now. Come on over, cameraman. All right, so cameraman just crunched into the corner. We're doing from a different angle this time. Make sure we get my juice in there. All right, so if you look on the McKay, on the inside there is lubricant. That makes sure that the thread isn't too dry when it's pulling through the leather. If you don't have lubricant there, then when the thread pulls through, there's so much friction that even a very, very strong sinew like this will not be able to hold. So you always have to make sure you got good lubricant. All right, open up the jaws, put your piece in, set your depth, and stitch. Scissors! And we'll do the other one. Uh-oh. Thread fell through. Gotta fix that. Come on. Here, you should actually show this. The thread has to go through the whole inside spindle here. So if you see, that's where the thread goes through. You see, it's actually a hole right here. All right, let's see if we can actually do this. Come on, brother. Nope, I can't miss it. I don't want to take the machine apart. It's just the top end. It's not that big a deal. I just don't want to do it. Yay! So much better. Okay. Come on over here. Let's see. Oh, that's pretty good. So, when you're stitching a slip sole on, or when you're stitching a just a standard sole, an Italian sole onto a shoe like this, you want to make sure that you always get your stitching back in the same holes. See? See? Stitches are pretty much back in the same holes. That way the shoe doesn't change sizes. All right. Next will be gluing. I'll see you next time for that one. See you in a minute. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and sand our lug soles so that they got a nice clean surface, and my sandpaper is a little bit gummed up, so I'm going to clean it too. You clean it with a little block of gum crepe. It's pretty simple. It gets loud. So, first coat of glue. Put the camera away. First coat of glue, we want a nice, even, thin layer. So you want to take basically one brush full of glue and spread it out over the entire sole, like that. Nice even layer, like that. All right, so when we do this, I want to bend the sole, move it around a little bit so it's got a little less tension to it. I want to have a little bit of a curve to it so that it's going to match the curve of the sole itself. You'll see that the sole, look from a perspective, you'll see it has just a little bit of a slight curve like a horizon, okay? That's called a crown. You always want to make sure that you have a crown on your sole. It's to make sure that the foot feels proper on the shoe. All right, so when we glue this, I want to get a brush full of glue, okay? Like that. Start corner, bring around the top, center, center, side. Come back to the heel, like that. That gets you all of your glue everywhere. Now I've got a couple of gloves right here because that was the main point. You don't want to take your time doing that. You want to make sure that while it still has the same viscosity, that you spread it out nice and even all over the sole, so that it's smooth, there's no globs on it, and anything like that. Now, if you wait more than a few seconds to do that, what you'll get is the glue will start to solidify, and you'll get streaks of glue which end up being globs because they'll pull other wet glue with them, and you'll have a glob of glue there. Now, what happens then is your glue doesn't dry at the same rate, so it also won't have the same adhesion because it's thicker in some places, thinner in other places. It didn't dry at the right time. You can't stick it at the right time. Now, when you're doing multiple coats of glue, the first coat is not as susceptible to that problem because you're going to let it dry for a good period of time. Your second coat is very much susceptible to that because you're going to be allowing it to dry for a specific period of time and then attaching the other material to it. So you still want to do a good job no matter what. You want to get your glue all the way around the sole, in between the stitches like that. You don't want to have any places that are going to cause air bubbles, leaks. That's what causes the sole to come loose. All the way across, back and forth, nice and even. Once again, no glue where it's not supposed to be, all the glue where it is supposed to be. Nice and even. Okay, this is our first coat. We're going to let that dry for a while. It's kind of late, so it'll actually probably be tomorrow. So we'll see you on the next coat, and then we'll get them second coated and then stuck together and get some heels on them. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to put on the second coat. We actually let this dry overnight completely just because we were tired. So we come back today, we're going to go ahead and do the second coat. You can see that there's no shiny left on the glue. That means that the glue is very much completely dry. It's not sticky at all. Okay, so we'll go through, do a second coat. We're going to let this dry for a while and then stick them together and continue from there. So once again, you want to do a nice coat, nice and even and solid all the way across. So you don't want any places that are completely dry, and you don't want any big globs of glue because then it won't dry at the same rate. You also need to be careful around the stitching. You want to make sure that you get glue all around the stitching, but once again, it likes to tend to glob up right around there, and you don't want to have that. So nice and even. Put that right there. Pull this one down. Go through one thing of glue, or one brush full of glue. And push your brush into it real good. That way you get as much of your glue medium onto the surface. Okay, once again, nice and even, no big globs, nothing missing, just like that. Same thing on your soles. Once again, I always like to give them a little bend before I glue them. That helps them get that nice crown in the center, which is definitely one of the things we always want to have when we're doing soles like this. My glue is getting a little bit dry, or a little bit low, so just taking more than one brush at a time. No big globs. Beautiful. One more. All right. And that's all for right now. We'll come back here in probably a few hours. I'm going to let this dry for a while, let all the solvents get out of it. We'll come back here in a few hours, stick them together, and then cut them and sand them for heels and go from there. All right, thank you. See you in a minute. Okay, so our soles have been drying for a few hours. You can see that second coat, no shiny left. You can see that there's a little bit of a glaze on the top, but there's no actual shiny. There's no dark marks or anything like that. And you can see it's not tacky. It's not sticking to my hand at all. So that tells you that we're ready to go. All right. So once again, we want to make sure we have a nice crown. So we go ahead and bend it again. We're going to stick from the toe to the heel. I'm going to go toe first. Try to get a center placement for your lug. Okay, so this line right here, you want to go center straight down the sole. And you also want to get the vibram in the center if at all possible. Through, push down a little bit. We're going to pick it up. Look, pretty even all the way around. So we go just a little bit right there. All the way down the side, kind of pulling to the sides as you're pushing. Nice and flat. You can see a nice good crown here, good crown there. Beautiful. You come in. Alright, so I got my outside edge right here. And I'm actually going to work my way across the sole this way. And the reason for doing that is I want to try and push any air bubbles that are out all the way across and out. Okay. Nice good solid bond all the way around. We'll go roll that on the 5-in-1 in just a second. Let's go ahead and put the other one together. Same process. And put that on there. Bend your sole a little bit. Like this. And go from the toe. Right here. So I'm feeling with my fingers where the sole connects to the slip sole. By the way, that's not endorsed. Alright. Come all the way around here like this. Once again, feel around the edge. Check and see. Pretty close. Center. Push to the outside edge. And come and beat it down. Alright, nice good bond all the way around. Let's go roll it on the 5-in-1. Come on over. So we're just compressing the slip sole and the sole together to make sure that the glue bonds very, very well. No air bubbles, no loose portions that dirt and dust and sand and things like that can get into the edge and break the sole loose. You always want to make sure that, particularly on the edge, everything's nice and sealed up. Do that once again. All the way around. All right, we're going to come over here to the blade. Start at the heel. And right next to the sole. Now you don't want to undercut because then it's hard to shave. But right now, go right next to the sole. Nice and level, coming around. Set that to the side. Do your other one. Alright, and we're going to take our lip knife. Okay, that's a lip knife. That's because of the little lip right there. And it's just a blade to get the bulk off of there. And it doesn't cut all the way through, or the glue is holding it on that last little bit there. Alright, so we got that cut all the way around. Not too bad. Come back with this one. All right, let's go get a couple heels for these. I'll set that one right here. And over here, let's see here. 12 or 13. You go with 12. So that's what we're going to put on there. Here. Okay. I'm going to lightly mark our edge by just doing a little bit of a score here. Right across there. See the line? Oops, stupid. Alright. Score right there. Then we're just going to go ahead and sand that edge. It's going to get a little loud. Just a minute. these up. Let's see. So we're only going to do 1-in-1 coat on this because the heels also get nailed on. They're going to get nailed on with some rubber clinching nails. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a nice even coat on this so it's got plenty to stick to. Let that dry for a little while, stick those together and nail them, and then it's going to dry overnight once again. And we'll come in tomorrow and finish it up. The glue is getting a little dry. You'll notice that it's a little thicker right there. So it, oddly enough, it's dry, but it takes it longer to dry from this point because it's a little more concentrated. So. This is what happens when you're doing rips all day. You have a tendency to open the glue pot a lot, which means that it's always got air going to it. All right, so nice even coat there. All of them. No big globs. And that'll dry nice here in about half an hour, 45 minutes. And then we'll knock those together and nail them, and we'll be set to go. All right, see you in a minute. Okay, so we have the heels on there. We've let them dry for a little while. We're going to go ahead and nail the heels and the toes, and then we're going to go through the finishing process. So we're almost done with these. We're looking good. All right, so we're going to use some rubber clinching nails, which are these guys right here. They will turn over underneath the insole, or underneath the insole, yes, when they hit the metal portion of the jack. I like using my ball peen hammer. So we're actually not going to do all the holes. Don't really have to, particularly since these are loafers. They're not hiking boots, so it's not really going to have a lot of cause to really rip these off. So between all the layers of glue, the nails are kind of just supplementary. Come through and use our punch. Set. All right, as you can see, some of them turn over right here and right there and right there. Now some of them don't, like this one right here. That one just missed the jack a little bit. That one turned over, but that one missed the back. So we're going to take our punch and we're going to force it to turn over. So I'm going to aim just a little bit this way, and it starts to turn down like that. I'm going to aim in, that way it's not going to come out the upper. Pound it down, and that sets real nice. All right, now on hiking boots, we would normally do the toe. We would nail the toe, but these are loafers once again, so they don't really need that. All right, let's do the other heel, and we'll go to finishing. Once again, so I'm going to pull up on the jack so that your nail is right on the jack itself. Okay, so it's going to hit right here. On this one, we're doing the same thing, but you can see that the jack is a little narrower than the shoe, so you want to come over and you set it like this. Make sure that it sits on the jack. Come back this way. Right here. And then one more. And pull back the other way again. Don't hit your thumb, by the way, that hurts a lot. You hear that hitting metal? A little ping shows that you're hitting. That sound says you're hitting the metal. Now inside the lug heels, there's a metal ring that sits about right here. Okay, and the middle ring sits right there, same thing as in cowboy heels. And what that does is those nails, they sit against the middle ring and they compress against the rubber and the compression on the inside here, and that's what holds it up. So we have the heels on, and I'm going to go through and do just a little bit of a trim so I'm not using so much sandpaper on this. Now the reason you don't want to have to sand too much off of this when you're trimming it is because sandpaper creates friction on the rubber, and when the rubber gets hot, it reconstitutes the glue that's on the inside because it is there's a lot of petroleum in it and it's heat sensitive. So the glue will reactivate under a lot of friction, and then it'll separate, which we don't want. So I'm going to trim a little bit of this off to take off some of that friction. And we're also going to change our sandpaper to where we have a nice fresh piece on there. So see, it was wide out here, and then we're going to go ahead and trim that off, and then also make it a little bit more centered, because the way I cut it before made it look like it wasn't centered. Okay, a little bit better. All right, let's change out our paper. I'm not actually done with that paper. I just need to use a fresh piece, so I'll actually put that back on when I'm done with this. All right, it's on. All right, it's going to get loud. He's going to show you both angles. I'm going to do one at a time, show you both ways of going through it, and see how it does. Nice paper on there. All right, cool. Okay, so lug soles on some bet loafers. Now, they turned out very nice. You can see they're very even. Everything's where it's supposed to be and all that. We're going to go through and remove some of the glue, but I wanted to explain something. So when you're putting lug soles on boots, on hiking boots and whatnot, you would actually stop at the trim on the 24 grit paper, because hiking boots can be left rough and they don't have to be really pretty or anything like that. They can actually they look better a little bit rough. So we went from the 24 grit, which is where we'd stop with hiking boots. We went to a 40 grit to smooth it down, give it a little bit smoother finish. We went over here to our cone sander. This is also a 24 grit, and that kind of rounds out this top edge to give it just a little smoother, nicer, more finished look, so it's not so angular. And then we came over here to the Numkeg, which is a 100 grit sandpaper, and that's what we finished it out with to get a really nice smooth texture, so it looks like a loafer instead of a hiking boot. All right, so glue removal, we're just going to put it on the welt wheel here, welt brush, and we're going to push in here. This is a neutral welt brush. We have black and we have brown. This is for removing the excess ink off of shoes when they're dry, but we like to use it as a quick glue removal. It's going to be a little bit loud. Alright, and then see all the glue is taken out. That way when we go through and clean it, it'll look real nice. Okay, so we're going to go through now. I don't think we're going to show that. We're going to go through and do liquid black on here, and then we're going to polish it and buff it all off, and it'll look real good. You want to go ahead and do that? You think we should do that one? Yeah, that's fine. Let's polish it. We'll do a quick shine job. That'll be good. Okay. Other job there. Insoles. Yes, that's a good idea. But these just have the ones that get slid in. They weren't actually glued down, so you can just go right back in there. We had the ticket number written down. All right, let's see. Alright, so we're going to do a little liquid black around the soles, and that's going to cover up the glue line, and it's not going to bleed or anything like that, because once it dries real solid. So, always onto a plate like that, never do it onto the shoe. This stuff loves to spread. Alright, so we're just going to go over that, and then it's going to make it nice and shiny, and it's also going to seal it up and cover over the glue line so we don't have that little white line there. That'll dry nice and pretty. If you can, you want to avoid bubbles, because bubbles are just another thing that you need to buff out. Once again, that just takes longer because it's more work. If you can avoid it on the front end, it's better than having to spend all the time on the back end making up for it. So that's a little prevention is worth a lot more than a lot of cure. All right, go through and wipe our excess off here. That way it didn't get on our polish. All right, that's out of the way. Okay, I know this looks like it's a dirty rag, which it is, but luckily we have a nice brown polish over here. Brown polish is going to be darker than this. Now we want to make sure that we get into the bottom here, most of all where the glue line was, because that's the one part we want to make sure that gets covered up, because that's going to be the one thing that shows. So get nice and in there like that, all the way around the glue line. Especially around the toe there. That's the part everybody sees. So, down in there real good, and come back, polish under the tongue, under the bit, down the bit. One shoe covered in polish. Oh, oh, oh. All right. See, make sure you get down deep into the crevice there. And that gap get filled up right there. That way, no lines show. And we're going to go back to the shine wheel here. Start off with our first shoe. Shoe number one. All right, so we have an applicator brush and a buffing brush. The applicator brush is this one, the buffing brush is this one. This has more hairs and they're stiffer. This has less hairs and they're finer. Pretty simple. right, so let's buff this off. Well, actually, let's clean off the bits real quick. So we want to clean off the bits. You do that by putting your fingers underneath them and just taking a little cleaning fluid right here and running them over, and that'll pull off any polish. See, it pulls off all that. And get underneath them, in the edges. So you'll notice that when I'm buffing off the shoes, I buff a lot, kind of in excess. And the reason is I don't want to have any excess polish on the shoes in any way whatsoever, because excess polish comes off on the clothing that the person is wearing. It'll come off on carpet, car seats, you know, edge of chairs, and all sorts of stuff like that. And we don't want that, because that makes for upset customers. So we want to make sure that we get all the excess polish off, and the bits is a good place to do it. Plus, make sure it shines very, very nice. Okay, then the last place that doesn't actually get buffed by the brush is underneath the bits. So I'm going to come through and just kind of buff that up real good to make sure all of that came. See, you know, a little bit excess right there, and that'll be the last place that it is. And just on the edges right there. Come back and buff this. Okay, so these are now bit loafers with lug soles. One down, and then let's just do it like this. Up. Boom. There you go. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you on the next video. Thank you.